So today is day 12, 6th October. So yesterday we did the list and keys, reducing JavaScript, and some more functions in JavaScript. We'll continue with the same. So first thing is about the React. We saw a few days back about the events in the React when we were doing the add form, and so we'll do a little bit more again, same thing. So let's say I have a function I generally call something like handle change. So I create this function, and whenever there is a change in the text field, I use this function. I can create another function also, maybe handle submit. That will be the submission of the form. I can create this function also. And third function, which is most common in React, is function handle click. So these three types of functions are very important in React, and they are mostly used in React. So when we have to change anything in the input box, we use this function. We create this function. We can rename it to whatever we want, but something similar handle change we have to use input when input is changed. And when the form is submitted, we use this function. And when something is clicked, button is clicked, or something we have to do, we use this function. If we go with the normal JavaScript, olden days JavaScript, how we used to write the function call, I would have written like this: button on click equal to, let's say, this handle change. I call the handle change, and then I may be creating the submit, or call this handle click button, handle click function, and I click the submit. So this is the olden way of writing or calling the functions in JavaScript, if anyone remembers. And if you see that we have the name of the function, and we immediately call the function also. So that means we name the function and we call it immediately. But it is not called immediately. It is called when you click submit, then only this function is called. So if we have to replace this with JSX, that is React, how this will look like? In JSX, it will look like following. Button, let's say in JSX, it will look like button on click equal to. So if you see, in olden days, we used to write on click with C small letter, but with React, we used to write C capital letter. And here we start with the curly brackets. In olden days, we used to start with the double quotes. And here I can write submit or whatever I want. And then if I want to call the same function here in JSX, that is the React, I will just call this name handle click. I will not put round bracket open and close. If I put round bracket open and close, then whenever the page will load, this function will be called. This will not wait for the button to be submitted. So in React, we just need to mention the name of the function without invoking the function. This is called invoking the function. That is the calling the function. We should not call the function in the React. I have got many code from different students. They said, what is the problem with this? Their code doesn't work. Why it does not work? Because they call the function immediately here. You should not call the function. You should not invoke the function like this. You should only give the name of the function which you have to call. Okay, so you should not do like this. This is wrong because you are invoking the function immediately when the page load or when the component load. But in React, we have to remove this and we have to use only the name of the function. So this is the difference between the olden days of JavaScript and the React JavaScript. So generally we call these three types of functions in React. You can call anything on click, on mouse over, on keyword, key up, on mouse down or mouse up. Whatever function you want to call, you can call, but these three are generally used in normal day-to-day form activities. And if you remember, we have seen how we created the change function and how we did the submit function. And if you don't remember, you can go back to the video and check it again. Next thing we also did,
आप ऐसे बोल दिए
also we did the state when we started the React, but I'll just go through important things again. This state is something we are using the hooks in React. And this is the local state which we did. And how to define the state in React, we'll just do it in short, though we did it already. We'll do it again. So let's say we are in one component, function app, or name it anything. It has return statement where we put some HTML tag. So this is the return statement which we put in the component, and here we can write our logic. So here generally we use the state hooks like in the following format. We have to use the constant and rectangular bracket equal to react.useState. And inside this, it will be having the default value, initial default value. So for example, I'll say 0. And here inside this rectangular bracket, we have to define the variable name, for example, counter. And we have to also define the function name, which can update the counter variable. So for example, set counter. So initially, when I write this statement, the counter value will be this 0 because we have defined 0 as the initial value. So counter should get the value of 0. And this set counter will be to update the counter value. So for example, if we have button, something kind of button here, and on clicking of this button, I want to increase the counter. So to increase the counter, I can write the function inside the on click like arrow function. And then here I can say set counter. And here I can say counter +1. So what it will do, it will take the current counter value and it will update with 1. It will add with 1. And then it will update the set counter. It will call the set counter function, and in set counter function in return will update this counter value. So if I click first time, the counter will become 1. If I click second time, the counter will become second. So this is how we create the state and then we update the state. So initially to create, you can have multiple create statements. For example, I can say name, set name. This set name is also, you can name it anything. If not, you should put set name also. You can put XYZ, DF, whatever you want. And so initially you can give some value, for example, John. And then when you call the set name, anywhere in the code and with update the name with Bob, then the name will be replaced with the Bob when I click this button. So set name is used to update the name variable. So this is the setter and this is the getter. So name is something you will get the name, whatever name you have assigned, that is called the John. And with the set name, you can update the value of this name. So this is how we work with the React state. We did these two things already. I just went through again to make you understand how these two things work in React. So we'll do a lot of this thing. In every project we have to use this one and we have to update it. So you will get many examples in future how to use it. Next thing which we have to do today, which is very important, is UseEffect. It's called the UseEffect. First I will explain you here what is the UseEffect is, and then I will show you practical example of the use state. So the UseEffect is called inside the, let's say I have component function app.
Sorry for interruption. I have one query.
Yeah, ask.
We can use state in functional components, or we should use state hooks for functional components.
Okay, so this state is used only in the functional components. There are class-based components where we use the state in a different way, not like this way. And you cannot use this way in the class-based components. Right now, the current trend is don't ever use the class-based component. Class-based component is old and it is now no one uses it. Okay, but you can use it. It will not give you error, but it has some problems when you build a large application. There are many problems which comes in the class component, which are solved in this functional component. So nowadays, if you see the class-based component, convert it into the functional component and try to use the state like this.
Okay. State used in class component, or here use state hooks?
Use state is only used in the functional components.
Okay.
You cannot use state in class-based components.
Okay.
Sir, I have one doubt.
Yeah, ask.
Can we create both way in same project? We can create class components as well as functional components.
You can create one component as class-based, one component as functional.
Yeah. Is it possible?
Yeah, it's possible.
Okay. There is no issue in future, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
there is no restriction, but if you use functional-based component, you can use the state like this. And if you go with the class-based component, there is different way to use the state, not like this.
Yeah, by using the set state, right?
Yeah, set state and this dot state.
Okay. Yeah.
So we will not do class-based component because they are outdated. I think in future, Facebook may remove it also because they have some very big bug in that one. Which only the people who have done a lot of projects, they know that what is the bug is there. So, but I generally don't recommend to use a class-based component. Use always the function-based component, and class-based component is outdated right now. But if you are using it class-based component, that is also fine. It's your personal choice. Okay, so you have to write some roundabout code to fix the, that there is it's not a bug kind of thing. It's, to do one thing, we have to do a lot of manipulation in the class-based component, which is removed in this function-based component. And I'll show you in some time what is that. That's a big thing. Right now, it's not scoped in this lecture. Okay. So
it is mandatory to initialize state here.
This use state is used only if you want to
By
use the
default value.
Default value? If you don't put default value, it will be null.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. We can store here object array.
Yes, you can go with object, anything, or array, or whatever data type you can do.
Okay. And then update.
Yes, update with the set counter. This is a setter, and this is the a getter.
Okay. This is a getter or this set counter is a setter?
Set counter is setter to set the variable value. Counter is getter to get the variable value. So if I put counter, I will get 0. But if I use set counter, it will update the value of the counter.
Okay, thank you. Nice.
Sir, I just joined before 5 minutes. Yesterday
Okay.
you continue on that OOPS concept, right? Is that you completed that concept in
Which
today?
concept? Which one?
That OOPS concept, object oriented in JavaScript.
Okay, object oriented I will take now today. I haven't started today.
Okay. Yesterday we saw that functions, right?
Right. Yeah, I'll continue now today.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, can you please reveal that what's the big issue in the class component?
That one is, not a simple thing to understand because that is very high level. You won't be able to see it now. But
Okay.
time will come, then I will show you what is the problem with that.
Okay, sir. Okay. Yeah.
Sir, can you define state management? This is a state management?
This is the local state, and this is only applied to this app component. And we will also see the Redux, which is the real state management. And then in Redux, you can use the state all over the components. So if you have 100 to 1000 components in your application, you won't be able to work with the local component. Though you have to use the local component for some local work, but if you want to talk with other component, you have to use some common place of the state. So we will be using Redux to do that. Got it?
I don't understand local component or real component.
Okay. So this is the component. We are using the state
Yes.
here. We are using
Yes.
the state here. Let's create another component. Let's create app2. This is another component. Now this counter is only applied to app2, and this counter is only applied to app, right? What if I want to use some variable called as, let's say, user details, for example, username. So let's say I have the username from the database. I call that database, I have the username, but let's say I call it in app2, but I want to use the username in app also. How will I pass this username to the app? Initially, I created username in app2, or I have called the database in app2. I have username in the app2. Now I want to use this username in app. How will I use it? I cannot use state because this username is only created here
Local,
in app2. So we should have some common place where I can save this username. That is called the global state. Maybe you can call global state, where app2 can also talk and app also can talk. So when I create the username, I will update this state with the username, and then app will also call this global state, and then app can also get the username. So that is called the state management, and that can be achieved by using the Redux.
We will cover further.
Yeah, we'll start that soon. I have to just finish few basics before I jump into the Redux.
Okay, thanks. Please continue.
Okay. So next important part of the React is UseEffect. And UseEffect is very important because whenever you use the functional component, you have to use the UseEffect. So let's check how we can use the use effect. So how to use the use effect? So here is my component, and here I will return something. Okay, let me create a new example file so I can show you on the browser also. So let's create, yesterday we create examples, let's create new example. Okay, here I will say, so this is my component. I'll rename it to example. I'll make it as a arrow function. I'll remove this function. Okay, so this is my component. I have example. So now I'll create one variable for you to understand how the React use effect works. So for example, constant counter, set counter. I'll use react.useState. Okay, now I'll use the React use effect. It's kind of function, and it accepts the another function inside it called as arrow function. We can put arrow function. So this is the use effect, and here I write the arrow function, and inside this curly bracket I will write console.log we are in use effect. Okay, so now I will also create one button here. And in this button, I will call the set counter, and whatever the value of the counter is there, I will add it 1 to it, and here I will put the 0 in the start. So let's run this and see what happens to the use effect. I will call this in the app.js. So we have example 1, I will use example 2 now. So whenever I call this slash example, now my example 2 will be called. Let's run that one. So this is my example. I have the submit button. Let me print the counter also so you can see what the counter is going. And I'll say value of counter is this one. So I created this counter variable. I am showing this counter variable here. And then when I click the button, counter value is updated. So let's go here. So you will see whenever the page loads, you will see we are showing this, we are in the use effect. That means use effect is called. Now when I click submit, counter is changed to 1 and we are in the use effect. When I click again, counter is click 2 and 2 times we are in the use effect. And I can click multiple times and you will see every time when I click submit, this is also called. So that means whenever there is change in the state variable or the props, if we get some props, whenever there is change in the props or whenever there is a change in the state, we call the use effect. So use effect is a function where you call something when is changed and you want to call this use effect. So in real world, it happens like that. you have the form and user puts the search field in it. Or if you have the form or you have the table and there is a sorting kind of a table is there, that if you click the name, the table should sort with the name. Or if you have age, if you click the age in the top header of the table, then you have to sort based on the age. So whenever there is a change in the state variable, all the props UseEffect is called. So this is the basic function of the UseEffect is there. Now I will create one more variable called as name and set name. And I will give the name of John, initial name of John. Now if I click the second button, so I'll create another button and here I will call the set name. And here I will change some name thing. Maybe I can say change name to Bob. So whenever initially it is John, when I click this button, I will get change name to Bob, and I can show this name is here. So let's see what it works now. So I have the John and the value of the counter is 0. I click the increase counter, it goes to 1, and we are in the UseEffect. When I click the change name Bob, and we are also in the UseEffect. So no matter what variable I change, we are inside the UseEffect. So if you have thousands of variables in this page, whenever you change the variable, this UseEffect is called, and then will it make your application very bad. So you only want to call the UseEffect when you want to, let's say there is a change in the counter only, or when there is a change in the name only, or you don't want to concern about these two. Only on the page load UseEffect should be called, and no matter what, if you change the counter, it does not affect this UseEffect. Or if you change the name, it should not affect the UseEffect. So that's the reason we have to do some changes in the UseEffect, so that it should only call on the page load, or it should only call on the counter change, or it should only call on the name change, or it should call on any change. So right now, whenever there is any change in counter or name, UseEffect is called, and that is very bad, because in your real world application you may having hundreds of variables and you don't want to call UseEffect on every change of every variable. So practically this UseEffect which I have written here is meaningless. It's impracticable, and no one use like this. People use when UseEffect, let's say I have to use UseEffect only one time when the page load, when the component loads. So I will just pass comma rectangular bracket. When I pass this rectangular empty bracket, that means it will load only once when the component loads. It will not load again and again on the change of counter or name. So now let's refresh it and I'll show you. So I loaded the page and you see we are in UseEffect. Now when I change the name is changed but UseEffect is not called. When I increase the counter is increased but no UseEffect is called. Why? Because I am passing this empty rectangular bracket. This empty rectangular bracket means it should be called only once when the component loads. Now you want to call UseEffect when the counter is changed, not the yeah.
When the page loads also, the UseEffect will work, right?
Yeah, page load, that means component is loaded and then the UseEffect will be called.
Okay.
Now you want to call the use effect when only the counter changes but not the name. So I can call this counter and I will put it in this rectangular bracket. So here I can say counter is changed. So
Sir,
now,
I have one doubt.
yeah,
Sorry to interrupt. How can we do to change the component?
change the component when, like this in the app.js, when you route from one to another component. That way you change the component.
No. You told right. When the component changes, the use of it will execute, right?
No. Yeah. See that there are two things. When you are on one
This empty
router,
array will okay.
when you are one router, right, and you go
Okay.
to another router, and each router is defined to component. So when component is changed means when you are in one component and you change the route, when you click the link to go to another page, that is another component, then it's called component change.
Okay. But router in the sense, in one route we have multiple components, right, sir? We have multiple components.
In one
right?
route, we have one main component, only one component.
Okay. I just thought in that way. In home page we have two sections. For only one section we updating that component. I asking how to update that component alone. Is there way to update that component alone?
Okay, you ask later. Well, let me finish this. I'm not clear on what your question. We'll talk again more in detail. Okay, let me finish this use effect, and then we'll come back to questions. So this use only when the page load or when the component loads. Okay, so this is only, why it is called only on page load, because I have the rectangular bracket here. So here is, I can say on page load or on component load. Okay, so this is called the use effect. So next, this use effect, we can write multiple use effects. Now this use effect is called only when the counter is changed. How do I know? Because I'm passing counter variable inside the rectangular bracket. Now let's see how it works in the action. So when I load the page, so on page load I am calling it, and since initially the counter was nothing, so first time when you put something default value, then also the counter variable is updated. So counter use effect is also called here. Now see, if I change the name, nothing is called because page load is not called, even the counter change is not called. But when I change the counter, you will see this counter use effect is called. But when I change name, nothing is happening here because we have not written anything to change when the name is changed. Let's write another use effect which will only change on the name change. So I will put name here, and here I will say name is changed. And now if I refresh the page, so initially all three will be called because all three are updated on the page load. And now when I change the counter, counter is called. When I click the change name, name is called. Let's write another use effect which will be called on both changes, maybe counter and name both. So I will pass name and I will also pass counter. Name, and here I can say name and counter both are changed. Okay, so both are changed. Let's call this one. So I'll say increase counter, counter is called, and name and counter are changed. That is also called because this one is called when both are changed. Any of them is changed. Both means not both together. Any of them is changed. And this one is called only when counter is changed. If I change name, I am only calling the name is changed, and I am also calling name and counter are changed. Name and counter are changed means either of them is called, because you cannot change both at one time. Generally, each button is having different action, so it's either of them should be changed, and we should call this one. So it's not name and counter, it's name or counter is changed. Okay, so this is the use of the use effect. This one is called on the page load. This one is called when counter is changed. This one is called when name is changed. This one is called when name and counter is changed. Now, let's put this in the navigation so we can see. So let's put in the navigation. Where is our navigation? Okay, in the navigation, let's put one more link to example. Okay, and in the routing, in the app.js, I will also call the layout route for this example. Okay, let's call this one. Okay, so I am in the admin page. I'll refresh the page. Okay, so I am on the home page. Nothing is there on the console.log. So now the component is changed. When I click about, component is changed to about page, about component. When I click contact, URL also changed and component is changed to contact. And when I click the example, component is changed to example, and you will see initially on page load is called, that is actually on component load, and counter is changed to 0, name is changed, and name and counter is changed. Now if I can change the counter, I call these two 1. When I change the name, I call these two 1. So this is how use effect is called. Now let's see the practical usage of this one. So let's say I have, let me open the page. So let's say I have the table, and first row is name, second row is age, third row is rank, fourth row is points. And here I have the first user, user 1, age of 23, rank of 44, 5, points is 200. Second is user 2, age is 43, rank is 12, and point is 100, for example. Now I want to sort this table. When I click the name, this field should be sorted. When I click the age, this field should be sorted. So when you load the page, this data is already loaded from the database. But when you click the age, I want this to do the sorting. So I can write the use effect for this. I can say React.useEffect, and here I'll write the function, and I will pass the parameter. So this parameter will be the title which is clicked. What is clicked? Let's say I put this as a sorting field. So I can let's say some sorting field is there. I will put sorting field. So sorting field will be the name when I click this name. Sorting field will be age when I click age. Sorting field will be rank when I click rank. Sorting field will be points when I click the points. And that sorting field is passed here. And inside this function, I can say if sorting field, I'm just hard coding, but later on we can use the dynamic thing, equal to name. Then I can do sorting on name field. I will do some calculation to the sorting on the name field. So whenever only the sorting field is clicked, that is it changed, we can call some logic to do the sorting of that column. So this is the practical use of UseEffect. Now you ask what you are asking. You are asking about some component.
I have one question here. So
Yeah.
let's say inside the UseEffect you have added the name as a hard coded. So is there any way to get the let's say whatever the header we are clicking, so can we get this dynamically so we don't have to write a code again and again?
Yeah, we can do that. So we can do like this. So for example, I have sorting field here and set sorting field. So I can here write down console.log table header, which is clicked is sorting field. So this one will show which sorting field is clicked. Then I can click right the multiple buttons. So for example, the header is name. I will say name is clicked, and here I will check the set sorting field to name. So let's say if I have another header called as age. So here I will pass age, and now when age is clicked, actually we are going in the sorting part, and we'll say the age is clicked or name is clicked, and based on whatever dynamic you have clicked, you pass that in database and get the, or you pass in your function to the sorting. For example, so I'll say click name. So table name is click the name. I click age, so age is clicked. So let's say these two are the header, and when age is clicked, you do your calculation on your array and sort based on the age. Or if you have the name, you do the sorting based on the name.
But still, we are writing as a hard code as you can see. As a button, you are added the name. So I was asking like we can get the value like a this dot click like something like that.
If you have this in array, this name is coming from because name is clicked, right? Because this name is clicked because name is clicked. So this name either you hard code here. Here it's hard code is allowed and it is natural and it is to be done here only. And here you don't do dynamic kind of thing unless you have all this button dynamically created. Then you can take the name dynamically. Like we used the map yesterday. Okay, so this header is commonly static kind of thing, header, which one field to be clicked. So here we have to pass the name. So here I'm passing the name, here it is coming dynamically. So this is called dynamical. It does not mean that everything this should come dynamic. If you want it dynamic, then you have to make an array and you have to call this button in the array. Then it will come from array and it is the dynamic name also. Getting it?
So I got your point. So like, can we do this like this dot something like? Is there any property to get?
There is no this kind of thing in this. This you cannot use this.
Okay, prop will be get from that situation. Okay.
Yeah, either you get from array or you hard code it.
Okay.
Okay, so now this is something about the UseEffect. So do you have any question on UseEffect?
Yeah. Here we updated, right? Based on the state, we updated the UseEffect, right?
Yes, or props. You can use props also. Whatever the variable name you want, you can use that one. On change of that variable. Sometimes props also come. You can use that also. Whatever variable.
Those one example with props.
Props?
Can you teach the props?
The props is everywhere. We can
props
get
is,
anywhere.
Yeah, so this props is the component. So this props is something, we get in every component. So for example, console.log. You want to see the example of props. Okay, let me show you example of props. So now what I'll do, I'll go in the app.js. I will create multiple layout. Example, in maybe I haven't told you. So this is the example, and if you want to pass something dynamic in the URL, you can pass that, and you have to use colon and whatever name you have to give. So for example, if I give colon ID, so after example, whatever I see in the URL ID, then it will pass dynamic value in this component. So if I pass colon ID, I'll show you now what happens. Now if I go refresh, so here I will pass 23. So you will see in the props I have the match. In the match I have the params. In the params I see ID equal to 23. So if we want to pass any dynamic value in the URL, in the route we pass like this. And let me close this. So in the route we pass like this, colon ID or name or whatever you want. You can have multiple also, colon sub ID. This also is possible. So when I pass this ID, it will be accessed in the component like this. Props, inside props we have the match, inside match we have the params, we get a 23. If I pass to 25, then it will be 25 here. Okay, so I will create one navigation so that you can see the value is getting changed, and based on value we can show the even right now also I can show. So right now I'm getting props as ID 23, so I can write ID constant ID is equal to props dot match dot params dot ID. So this is the path to get the ID. So I can use ID also. ID is changed. So generally this is something I'm getting from the previous in the URL, but I can write the form, I can write the input box where I can change the ID and pass that ID in this component, and that way I can use the props also for changing it. Right now you won't see the real effect because on the page load anyhow this ID is called, right? On page load also it is called, because whenever the use effect is there, it is called one time, no matter what you put this, because one time this variable is changed. Initially some value is put on it, so first time it will always show. So you won't be able to see, but you can see that I'm calling the ID. So somehow if you have one component and calling another component and you're passing the value in that and you pass different ID, then the use effect will be called. Getting it? Also when we do Redux, you will update one component. You update one component with readme.txt. So like we have two apps. In one app, when you update this one component, that variable is changed, and if you are accessing that variable here, then it will go here as a props, and then the use effect can be called here in this app one. So that's a component. We have to build that component. I will do that when time comes, but you get the general idea how the props is also used in here in the use effect. Got it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because right now ID is props. Anything, any variable, whichever you want to, if it's changed, you can call the use effect. So the use effect is very effective. So I won't be able to do JavaScript and object oriented today because a lot of time went to the use effect, but I will do one example on this use effect, so you will get little better idea. And in the use effect, if I return something here, like arrow function, if I return this arrow function, then this part is called when the page is unloaded. That is, when you move from one component to another component, and you are moving from this component to away from this component to some other component. Something called as unmounted. If you have read the unmounted or on unload kind of thing, this part is called in the return part whenever this page or this component is unloaded. So this also we'll see some example. Let me see if I have an example which I will show you. Okay, so let me click the new application. We'll do only one example more, and we'll not do other part today. It's a lot of time wasted on this one. Okay, so not wasted, lot of time went on UseEffect, but it's a big topic. Okay, so let's create one example. Let's say example. Okay, so
Okay, so Manish, one question here.
yeah,
So let's say when you write the function component, then the method has comes by default as a function, and you are changing that as a constant variable declaration.
right.
So what if we will leave this as a function? Will it work, or is there will any problem?
So there are three ways to create the component. One is this way.
Mm-hmm.
One is constant example equal to this way is the second way, and third way is class example extends react dot So these are the three ways we create the component. One is the function, one is this constant, or one is this class. These two are called function components. This is called the class component. This class component we are not using right now, so I will delete it. I can use either this one or I can use this one. To make a common standard, I am changing this to this example, but I can use this one also. It's up to me. So I just want to make a common all over the pages. So I'm using this one because I prefer this way. But you can use anything, whatever you want. So let's create one sample UseEffect project, which you will like it to see how the UseEffect work kind of thing. So here I will put one constant. I use the use state equal to react.useState, and here I will create object which has x value of 0 initially, y value of 0 initially. So I create object with x and y value, and here I can say object set object, and this object is having x value of 0 and x y value of 0. Okay, so this one is the first one, and then I will start with the React UseEffect, and this UseEffect is called only on the page load. So I will write the function first, arrow function, and comma rectangular bracket. When I put rectangular bracket, that means it will be only called on the page load. And here I will add one listener. So I will say window dot add event listener. So I will add one listener which will listen to mouse move. So whenever I move my mouse, it will listen to that, and then it will call one function which I will write down now. So right now I just put func1. I will write down that function and I will name it to func1. I will also return this statement with an arrow function That means whenever this component is unloaded, we should call this function. And here I will say console.log done, something like that. Basically to see if it is called or not. And here I will say window dot remove event listener. And what I'm removing, I'm doing the mouse move. So that means I don't need mouse move. I don't need this mouse move listener. So initially, when the page will load or component will load, I will listen to every mouse move. That where is my X position and Y position of my mouse. Now I will click this func1. Let me create this function. Constant func1 is equal to so here I will say maybe I will get some event and then I will say console.log X equal to event.page X. This is the value for X which we get for the mouse event, and Y will be event.page Y. So this is something we get the X location and then Y location. And once I get this location, I will update this object also. Set object, I will update with X value of event.pageX and Y value of event.pagey. So initially it is 0, and whenever I move mouse, since I have add listener on the mouse move, so that means whenever I move my mouse, I will be calling this one. Okay, so this is called, and now here in this div I can say mouse position object.x and object.y. So here I'm displaying mouse position. So whenever I come to this component, I listen to the mouse move, I call this function. On every mouse move, it will update my X value and Y value. And then when I return, I have to remove the listener. If I don't remove this listener, then this event will be listened even when I'm in another component. So we have to unset this also. Now if I call this component, so let me call this component example 3. So I'm calling example 3. Okay, so whenever I call example, it is actually calling the example 3. Let's check this in practical way. So first I am in the about page. Okay, let's go to example page. So in example page, you will see whenever I move my mouse, it's changing the position, and I'm also seeing the console.log. Okay, now when I click the about page, okay, I get some error. Let's see what its error is. Okay, so this remove int listener also need one more parameter, and that parameter is, so this does not work like this. We have to call the same function again. Okay, so this does not work alone with the mouse tool, so that's what the reason was there. So I go to page 1. Oh, sorry, in about page, I will go to example 1. and then I can move the mouse, and when I click the about page, that means I am moving away from the example. When I am moving away from the example, I have to call this unload function, and unload function is something which comes inside this one. This function is the unload function because I return it in this use effect. And so when I click the about, you will see the mouse movement should be gone. So this should not come after I call another component. And also you will see this done console.log. So let me click this about. So you will see done is called. And now when I move my mouse, nothing is happening here. If I remove this part, if I comment this part, so that means I am only adding the listener, but I'm not removing it. So if I'm not removing the listener, even if I'm on another component, you should see it's been triggered. So I am writing an example. I see all the example when I go to about. Okay, so even though this error is there, which is immaterial right now, because of I have done the wrong thing. Actually, this is not a practical thing because I listened to it and then I did not remove that listener when I change the component. But at least you will see that I have not removed the listener. I can see that I can see the listening on another component also. So this one should be called on the unload of the component. So when we are done with this page, we call this return. This hardly is used in practical thing unless you have to clean up something like this. Otherwise, the normal pages like Facebook pages or Craigslist pages or anything website does not need this return part. Since we are using the add event listener, which is taking the control of my page, which starts and never ends, so we have to end it. So if we have to do something cleanup work, we will call this. Otherwise, this return statement is never used. It's hardly used in practical application. Most of my application project does not need this one because I don't start something which needs a cleanup kind of thing. This is only the cleanup function, and it is rarely used in many of the applications. But if you have something like this, or if you want to clean something, then you can use it. Is that clear? This is another example of use effect. Okay, that's all for today. So we took a lot of time on the use effect. If you have any question, you can ask.
Thank you, sir. Sir, can you reopen app.js?
App.js.
Sir, here parameterized path.
Okay, I removed that parameter. This is the path.
Yeah. Sir, object is not working in my project.
Object
in
is not
case
working.
of parameterized path.
What it is giving?
Sir,
any error it is giving or anything?
No error, but same reflect in another page.
Okay, can you put your code in the chat? Let me see this part. Okay, or have you put it in the GitLab or somewhere? You have your GitLab or somewhere you put your code, because I need to see. There may be some mistake doing it other place, because here you may have written same thing, but I have to see overall page what mistake you have done. Either you send me this whole file, in the chat, in the Telegram, so I can take a look.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
So this is all for today. Today we did actually the use effect part. So we did not did much about object oriented or the problems, but we'll do tomorrow. Not a problem, because it took a lot of time to do the use effect. Okay, so let me just put this.
Actually, same page reflect in another component, home component, about component, contact component.
Okay. Let me take a look, or we can talk separately. I have to drill into it what mistake you are doing, So I need the file and see where exactly is your problem.
So I will send on.
Yeah, send in Telegram your file, or give me the GitLab or GitHub repo link.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so we did this one.